taking part in tonight's dinner. I really appreciate that, and this has really been a treat listening to these guys talk all day today, Phil last night. And I'd like for him to formally share it with all of us, and also so we can get it on videotape for our history and everything. And so I've asked them to kind of give their general summary of what they were thinking about when, what kind of things led up to the development of the game and how they got started in the general direction of things and events that led to what we have all come to love and know as a sport, not just a game anymore. And so at first, I'm going to just go in the order of the first contact I made when I found is Phil Crossman. So if you'd be willing to kind of tell us where it began for you and how you thought a game could ever come out of forced air.
Thank you. I've been trying to correct some impressions over this week since I got here on Friday, I guess, and his first questions to me were something about how did you come up with it? It was as simple as that. And my memories of it, and that's all I can tell you, that about 10 years before the game ever had a prototype, or that we ever really played a game, the three of us together, I've been doing some work for NASA through a company called Pneumodynamics Corporation. And we were charged with studying the movement of, well, we call it orbital rendezvous and grappling techniques. Ways for spacecraft to get together in space, rendezvous, latch onto each other, and da-da-da-da. Well, to us at the time, and this is the early 60s, I think, 62 or something like that, we thought this was miraculous. We didn't even know they could launch space vehicles. And here we are guessing what they're going to do once they do get launched. So we had a lot of fun with that. We started out, my idea was to buy a bunch of big old, what we used to call in the 50s, Hollywood hubcaps. Just great big, domed discs. And we cut the top out of them, mounted little old 49 airplane engines with propellers on them, and went out in the parking lot and tried to get at least two of these to run at the same time, which if you've ever been with model airplane engines, ain't easy, because they can be a little difficult. And as soon as we get two going together, we throw them across the parking lot alongside each other, and we tried various kinds of grappling devices on them. We had the A vehicles and the B vehicles. The A vehicles were, well, it was Velcro, basically. The A vehicles had little open hooks on them, and the B vehicles had closed hoops on them that were opposed at 90 degrees. So if you were lucky, you could get them to latch up when you threw them across the parking lot. And then we took high-speed movies of how they reacted when they ran into each other. Boring story, but that's how, from my point of view, it all started up. And we had so much fun doing this, except for keeping those engines running. And we said, what if we turn this upside down and we get a blower working underneath somehow, and we just run them across a smooth surface, and we don't have to get 3, 4 gas engines run at the same time. Ooh, that sounds like a good idea. Well, we didn't know. Somebody invented this ages ago. And if we'd had the right scientific cattle at the time, we could have bought one for, I don't know, $800, $900, been done with it. We'd have invented air hockey right then. No, but I always remember that because we had so much fun. By the time we turned it upside down, we got an air flotation table going, and we threw these things at each other and got them to hook up in various ways. We had so much fun doing that I just remembered it forever. Like 10 years or so. And, went out to New Mexico and took my kids and had a hell of a time. Came back, got hooked up with Brunswick. And
What year was it?
oh Lord, I would say '67 we came back from New Mexico. And I think that was the year I came to work for Brunswick. It might have been 60. No, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, I think I remember it was 66, 67. Oh, that's got to be right because my kid was 4 and my youngest was 4 years old in New Mexico. Anyway, that's 67 would be right, I think. And some stupid placement agency that I never trusted put me in touch with Brunswick, and turned out to be the best thing ever happened in my life. Most creative atmosphere I've ever had to work in. And these guys were a big part of that. So that's kind of where the thought, I mean, I just never had that much fun in my life. So when I worked with Brunswick for almost a year, I think, before we started this little program where we meet every week, or I don't know, I guess it was once a week, wasn't it, Brad?
You know, I don't remember.
What do you think? How often did we meet with Anderson and talk about new products?
Oh, correct, there was the Tiger Group and all that.
Yeah.
You and I worked directly.
It was
for
always
Anderson.
kind of loose, yeah.
There was a semi-formal way of presenting products, putting on the spot.
Yeah. Well, especially because those guys were all our bosses were interested in was golf.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, everything was golf for them.
The only reason they call it golf.
We
is
were all
Florida word
we
was
were all
used.
very devoted to developing an all seasons golf game at the time that could be played indoors, and that took up most of our time, I think. And so anyway, but one of the when we came up with one of these weeks when it became a little more formal. I remembered that project, that I'd been on 8, 10 years ago. And I said, well, I think we ought to build an air flotation table. Because I just thought that was a fascinating idea. You could build this little table on very little power and float things over it that were frictionless. They could move without slowing down. So anyway, from my point of view, and I don't think we've ever really agreed on how everything happened, but all I wanted to do was to get a new game table of some kind, and of course working for Brunswick, billiards. Oh yeah, that would be cool. Imagine this table with all these little pucks floating on it, with numbers on them, different colors and everything. Oh my God, that sounded good. Ping pong was always one. I was a good ping pong player. I'm sorry, but that, I could always always hold my own in ping pong. So that was big on my list. And we all had our own ideas. So anyway, we got the authorization finally to go to the effort of building one of these. And Bob reminded me tonight that I had found this scientific, or one of us found this scientific catalog that actually built these damn tails. Okay, well, we didn't know that back when I first did it. So, and they made theirs out of honeycomb. And all you had to do was cut these little slots in the honeycomb, and air would distribute itself equally all over the table and all. And that sounded pretty good. So that was kind of our first, because we made pool tables out of honeycomb. And so that's what caught my attention. I thought, well, this is a natural for us. We can do that. And I'm going to give it to Bob now, because Bob kind of picked it up from there, because he knew he'd been working for Brunswick longer than I had, and he kind of knew his way around the pool tables and everything. Didn't you? Okay, take it over, Bob.
Crossman come up with this idea, and he showed us this illustration, and we decided to build one. So to test it, the first thing we did is we got some pegboard, and we built a table about 2 feet square, and we put a centrifugal fan on it, squirrel cage blower. It wouldn't do squat. No, those are so big. You know, that's pressure.
Hold a little bit.
The holes were way too big. So we got a used vacuum cleaner. It was a major investment, $5. And we put the used vacuum cleaner in there, and then we put a piece of masonite, and we drilled 1/32 inch holes through every hole. And you could float things on it, right, Bill?
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
about yay big. So we requisitioned through Brunswick a pool table that had not been machined. So we just had a blank. 4 by 8 foot, 2 sheets of masonite about this thick. And Jake Corbin was a technician, and we put a piece of chipboard, a pegboard on top, and he took a hand drill and a bushing, and he drilled every hole. And he turned it over. And
4,000.
Yeah.
24 holes.
Yeah, we turned it over and drilled 1/4 inch holes on the other side, and then we built a wooden box and hooked up the vacuum cleaner. And by golly, it worked. It floated. Now, this is a very scientific way of determining the spacing for air hockey, and you go out there and the damn burn holes are still 1 inch apart. They still match a sheet of paper.
Trust me.
So anyway, the tables worked. So first thing we tried was 3 cushion billiard, and we found out you could play 300 cushion. The damn thing's never. They float all day, and if you put a sheet of paper under one corner, they all go downhill because it's so blasted sensitive. Well, then we started talking. Well, we could play 8-ball. So we took the cushion off. The cushions by that time had evolved into steel bars. We took the ends off, and Corving was cutting notches to make pockets. And this funny-looking guy over here with the glasses, Brad Baldwin, he and I used to drink coffee together every morning out of the vending machine. Brad walks in the room. The thing is running. He sees the disc, he throws it, it goes off on the floor. He said, "You owe me coffee." And I said, "Hey, wait a minute. I gotta defend myself." There's a blackboard, because we used to do engineering sketches on the blackboard and then take a picture for the book. We grabbed 2 blackboard erasers and we're beating this back and forth. Now you got 2 engineers in the research lab and you're beating the thing back and forth across the table, and the boss walks in. What are you gonna say? The boss said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "What's it look like? We're playing air hockey." And he said, "That's the corniest blank name I ever heard." But in a space of what, a week or so, everybody was playing air hockey. And we tried everything. The first ones, you know, we just set weights on there to decide how big the holes had to be, but we didn't have any deflector. And Brad said he was the wrong height. Come on up, Brad.
Yeah, you have to think about that for a minute. Okay.
And you see, I had an
Table height
advantage.
is not changed.
I had an advantage.
So that's why the table.
He played air hockey with one hand, I could read on the table. So anyway, we come up with air hockey. We're playing air. Then we made rectangular, you call them mallets, or we call them bats or puckers or whatever you want to call them. And then we, come on. Here's one of the originals.
Wow.
After it evolved into round. Then some of them had plastic shields because we were getting too much blood on the table. and the pucks were flying.
Show 'em the puck.
The pucks were flying off the table and hurting people. So we tried this. This is one of the original
It's like
no-fly pucks. Don't fly, don't float either. Way too heavy. And the first pucks were lucite because that's what we made the billiards out of.
Right, yeah.
Well, you had to wear safety glasses. You'd hit them, they'd hit the rail and shatter. There were chips of lucite flying all over. And so we had to wear safety glasses to play air hockey. Then we
Yeah,
went
you have to remember that everything was evolving at once. I mean, we changed the rails one day, we changed the puck the next day, we changed the what do you call them, mallets.
No, we
The next
changed
day,
it.
yeah.
We changed the game more often than we changed underwear. It was, but it was just a very creative atmosphere. In the meantime, we're making golf clubs. We made the first golf clubs with the toe weight. We could have been 10. We made the first plastic golf clubs. We made structural foam golf clubs. I still remember Bob Conklin was the chief engineer of Golf Nut, and he wanted to know if those foam golf clubs would stand up. So I teed up an 1.5 inch steel ball bearing, and he hit it, and it went, you know, a distance. And he said, "That didn't hurt a bit. Let's try a real one." He goes, he gets a Brunswick professional golf club, and he hits that ball bearing. But this is the atmosphere.
All right.
Now, this is the most fun we ever had. And Brad here is an electronic engineer. If you take his battery out, he quits. You're electronics, and I'm pretty much mechanical.
Way ahead of his time. Unfortunately, I couldn't get him to invent Pong in time to keep it from competing with air hockey.
Well, I left Brunswick in '70. It was very frustrating because we put the thing together, Brad and Phil and I put it in the conference room. The Brunswick Board of Directors had a meeting, and we found out later, to determine whether or not they kept corporate development. But they had a meeting in Muskegon, and they went in the conference room, and Jacobson and Hannigan. Hannigan was the president, and Jacobson was vice president for engineering for the corporation. They wouldn't quit playing air hockey. They were in the meeting. So we thought we won. Nothing. They put it in a warehouse. We played it for over a year. Nothing happened.
That year ended January 70.
Yeah, that's when
I left April 71, and they still hadn't done anything with it.
And it wasn't until they went to, yeah.
I want to have the camera.
Yeah, we went to, as the story I got it from Bob Lemieux, who's the third name on the patent. I never was able to get Brunswick to put his name on the patent. But they wanted to have an interesting display at the NSGA show in Chicago. And it fell to Lemieux's group to put it together. And Bob resurrected air hockey. They put it in the entry booth at Navy Pier in Chicago for the National Sporting Goods
What?
Association meeting.
Oh, that's what NSGA is.
I knew because I took the Follow Me golf cart. But they put the thing in there, and Brunswick had more orders by noon than they could ever fill. And they never made it. So Lemieux had to go back, and he headed up the group that developed the construction of air hockey. And that's how
He left that poor baby all alone to do that all by himself.
Just about, it was a solo, but he had nothing to lose, he was retiring the next month.
Now that was that 71 when they,
That would have probably been 72.
Yeah,
So they left in 71, and it went back into the bowling division.
yeah.
So there wasn't any corporate anymore. Corporate, gone. I know I was working at Ermanco Conveyor in Grand Haven, and I get a call from my wife that said, these guys all got laid off. And I said, throw a party. I have everybody down to our house. So I come back from Lawrenceburg, Indiana. I was at the Sigurd's Distillery putting in conveyors. I come back home, we throw a party, everybody cries about leaving. I went in Monday morning and got fired myself. We were all on board.
So y'all were thinking about it, working on it, playing in '69?
68, 69
68.
range. I couldn't put it, without getting my hands on the book, I couldn't.
Brad says they've been playing it over a year from January '69 to.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
so in 1968, you ordered that slab of slate up there, and you've been monkeying around ever since.
Well, we tried, oh Lord, we had like bumper pool bumps in there to try to shoot.
Well,
that.
we
We'll
put
take that, set a couple.
steel so you couldn't have a straight shot.
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
picked
had
up
to
steel,
bank.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to bank around them to play.
I'm sorry, we can't be more precise about the times. But we were having so much damn fun, we never wrote down a
Hey,
date.
Phil, would you turn my camera on and let somebody shoot and get up here with us?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's gonna take somebody more than me to.
While he's doing that, Brad, can you tell us about the ding dong?
Well,
Oh, yeah, get Brad on.
what we had was, the puck would come in, and once in a while, it would bounce and go out. And so then we would have a discussion about whether it really was a point or not. This was for coffee.
Something's never changed.
Yeah, I think that's still an
Some of
issue.
them remained friends through all this.
So I built a photocell detector at each end and went and bought a doorbell for a house. So one end it would go ding, and the other end it would go ding dong. So that was how that started.
What do you press?
The big chrome one.
This thing?
Yeah, that thing.
There you go.
Big
Let's see
chrome.
Do you guys know whatever happened to the table you first built? Is any of that stuff
Oh,
anywhere?
my Lord.
Can you
Remember,
imagine?
do you remember the first table?
Yeah.
The first table was all louvered doors.
Yeah.
The base was louvered doors. Just, I bought them off the shelf at, what would have been Home Depot then, but I don't know what it was.
Didn't you put a bridge over it? I thought you put a
That was
bridge
one
over
of
it.
the things we
No, that
found.
was troubled waters, remember? No, I'm sorry.
Hey,
I wrote that.
Yeah, we didn't want the board of directors to see a used vacuum cleaner, way to cut our budget.
Yeah, this was just a way of covering, because we didn't know how big the blower was gonna get, because we were just starting out.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a big space that we could have lots of air into without it looking like, like we.
So, who was the best air hockey player of you guys?
That would be
Well,
a-
look at it.
Rematch.
Well, we had a guy there.
Oh, we were always,
Joe Rigoni.
oh my,
Joe Rigoni.
a legend.
I love him.
He
His
a
name is
legend.
great.
He spent many years at Uncle Sam's Yacht Club, you know.
That's the way you talk.
And he was one of these guys, you'd be shooting pool, and Joe'd look over and he'd see this mess of balls, he'd go up, he'd go click, tick, 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 click, and he'd go, and he'd walk on. Well, he'd do the same thing with air hockey. He'd look at it, he'd go, blink, and he'd put one in, and he'd say, so we never knew if he could play or not, but he could get one shot. He may be the champion.
He may have been the luckiest person, or he was the best person.
And he was the best.
You never knew.
And, you know, I'm sorry, but, all three of us are pretty good at not letting the truth get in the way of a good story. But Joe was the master.
Oh.
My God.
Well, he was
Joe
like-
told stories from the U.S. Navy that you would just not believe. And he had a simile, or what's the other word for it? For just about everything.
Well, he was like a foul-mouthed Tom Swift.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, you know how Tom
He was
always,
tall,
you know,
colder than the then the ball's on a brass doorknob or something like that.
Luckier than a prostitute on a troop ship.
Here you go.
So you're saying it takes,
Now this is
it
on
takes
tape.
personality to play hockey well?
Well, yeah, there you go. And I have met so many personalities this weekend. I'm
It's,
delighted.
it was a bunch of creative people. Joe Rigoni could make anything out of anything.
Oh, yeah.
And you know,
Extra craftsman, yeah.
weld, paint, anything, he could do it. And Jake Corvin.
That's what we needed because
Jake
none
Corvin
of
was
us were really good at the hard stuff.
Jake did the holes, right?
Corvin was a Dutch immigrant.
Yeah.
He was sponsored in, and he was getting his citizenship. I actually still remember, he was taking an English test, and he asked Joe, he said, "What's the difference between ignorance and apathy?" And Joe said, "I don't know and I don't care." And Jake couldn't understand, we were all laughing. But this was the atmosphere. It's kind of like what you guys have here. It's not formal. Everybody's doing their thing, and everybody's having a ball.
And everybody's adding to the whole equation.
The whole was much bigger than any part.
That's right.
Well, the table that you guys put in that conference room, that the execs came in and played, and then eventually goes to the warehouse, and it goes to the show, did that table look like these tables, or did it have things in the center that you shoot around? When did you clean it up and make
Oh, no. The top, by that time, the top,
You decided?
it basically been decided. We had the goal size relative to the end rail. All of that had pretty much been decided by that time. But I think it still sat on the louvered base, and you know, and it was a wood. Actually, my vision of it early on, and I was the industrial designer dude. Okay.
He was an artiste.
Yeah.
He had a black beard then. Black beard.
Yeah.
My
He
wife
was
thought he
always
was a
only
great
16
handsome
years
Steve.
old. Anyway, it was the base. We only built one prototype. Yeah, that prototype existed for 3 years, as far as I know.
None of us, I don't think, you guys don't know what went into the NSGA show.
No, I don't.
See, we don't know
We weren't
how
there.
much dress up
Yeah.
Lemieux did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob told me he took the original table out of storage, cleaned it up and dressed it up. I do not know if he ever.
Well,
Mike
Bob Anderson made it look a little more modernistic than our first prototype, I think. Probably before it went to NSGA, I'm guessing. And it had colored Formica surfaces.
See, I never saw that. Last time I
Gray
played it,
and red is my remembrance of it.
the last time I saw the Brunswick table, it was masonry.
Yeah.
Raw, brown,
Yeah.
masonry.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
we,
thought we had black Formica on that.
no, not, the last time I saw it, it was just the rated
Okay.
game.
You didn't have a center line drawn?
No.
No,
No.
we didn't draw a center. We always imagined one when we played. We never reached much over the center.
You know, if you look at the drawings, there's one in there showing a hockey game, and I tried to talk him into moving the goal forward so that the puck could go around behind it, and it
Just like hockey,
would be out in the middle of the table. The drawing I put together for home built has the gate out in about 8 inches ahead, so that you can run it around behind.
Did all three of you think of it sort of like ice hockey on air? Or some of you thinking ice hockey, but some were not thinking
Oh.
ice hockey?
Oh, I think it was ice hockey. See, because there was an international hockey league team.
Yeah,
Muskegon Mohawks.
Yeah.
And Red Wings were,
Red Wings.
But
Well, it
here's
was a
all,
Red Wing
in
farm
Western
team, wasn't
Michigan.
it?
hockey's a fast sport,
Plus, we used
Yeah.
to
and all of the
eat
previous
pizza at
games were slow.
the brother for not
Brunswick, bowling, billiards, all slow.
Slow
You know
motion.
what I mean?
And when this air hockey broke, it was a fast sport to be played on that
Yeah.
table. And it was the speed, the sheer speed of that crazy puck that still to this day, I mean, I played with this no scenery now. This one guy out there was, let me shoot a couple of shots, yeah. Bloody fast, man. You guys play.
I don't think we ever knew how fast it was.
My reaction.
We might still not know how
I
fast.
can't hold a candle to you. It's just
There's
amazing.
just major disagreement.
And there's a
30
real
some odd
slender
miles.
lady that was played down there. Boy, was she intense tonight.
Bob.
It was amazing, and I love to see good, wholesome fun, and it's just great. And I really am honored that you guys invited us down.
Oh, yeah, and I want to thank all of you guys, because very few of you have missed taking a chance to talk to me. I think I visualize almost everybody who talked to me sometime in the last few days. And I think you got the spirit, man. You got the spirit that we had.
Yeah.
That when we were developing this, it was just.
I didn't know it was contagious.
When you
Don't
guys,
say about
Let's
the
give them a
great-
hand.
So,
Ready?
that's yeah.
mutual admiration society right here.
So, did you three have any idea that there was groups like this playing throughout?
Not until Chris got hold of me.
Chris called,
Honestly,
and,
no, I really
and
didn't.
invited me to
I
come to one
dreamed
in
of it
Vegas.
for years.
But I was working on a house in San Diego. Since I retired from active working for a living, I've been doing remodeling and stuff. I put it on the AutoCAD and do it, And I was in a deep problem in San Diego, and Sal and I just couldn't get over. Lord, we were within an easy drive of Vegas, and I just didn't really take it all that serious. Brad and I were talking less than a week ago whether or not it was a viable trip. It turns out to be one of the best we've had in years.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
it was,
My eyes are bad. Tell me where it's.
Thank you for Bob, when you guys were doing the development of air hockey and building your tables and stuff, and I heard Phil allude to equations, and you mentioned something about the speed of the puck and stuff. Did you do any modeling or any development, or were you doing like experimentation? Did you do any dynamics just to figure out, to come up with what you did, or was it all on the fly experimentation?
well, now
Did you-
remember, we were coming up with a zero friction surface.
Right.
At that time, the Brunswick mindset was more in games they understood, which was, like I said, billiard, bowling, they owned Zebco reels for fishing,
Right.
and it was all more or less standard sports. And
You want me to sign?
the research engineering that was done on air hockey was, hey, look, we got to get air up through here. We got a fan that puts out yay, and you run some calculations, and you say, okay, the area here is this, the area here, okay, now.
Well, that's what I'm asking about, the calculations. Were you doing things to calculate laminar flow? Were you
Not
actually doing any
laminar.
modeling?
I was doing airflow to make
Okay.
sure that I had sufficient air pressure. See, I was also working with in the conveyor business a little bit as a
Right.
consultant. And I knew that they had things like you could put under a refrigerator and hook up your vacuum cleaner and float a refrigerator. And you used to be able to buy those commercially and stuff like that. So I knew that I could lift things at air pressure. If you run the equation on air pressure, it takes very little air to lift something because the areas are large. So it was simply a matter of Phil and I got together, and can we do this? And I ran the calculation because we had some fans, those centrifugal blowers. And we measured the pressure, we measured the air, we looked in the catalog, see the CFM. So I simply calculated that, on this 2-foot square
Here's how much
sample,
area
this
you
little
need.
blower would
Yeah.
probably do it. Well, you couldn't get enough back pressure to force the air to distribute.
Yeah,
I could float the puck in the middle, but I couldn't at the edge because all the air was coming straight
It'll go to the
through.
least resistance, yeah.
And so then we put in smaller holes, and then we said, okay, fine. And look, it works. And showed Anderson that this little sample was work. Then you just tip it a little bit, and the puck would zoom, And we were floating fair-sized discs in that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, we're gonna start with a 1/32 hole. And you figure out there are 4,800 holes in that sucker. And, 9,600. Anyway, whatever, whole bunch. And,
1,048.
Yeah? Okay. You count them. But you got all these holes, and you
Just
got to
ask
figure those
somebody who
areas.
drilled all 4,048 of them.
Yeah. And
They remember.
yeah, even we put a little steel bush and drilled the holes by the bushing. And so then the 132nd holes worked with a vacuum cleaner. Because the airflow coming out 1.25 inches, 2, would have enough back pressure that you had a good distribution of air through the plenum. And you could float the puck on the whole surface. So that was the engineering.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a misnomer or a misconception to think that at the time we're developing, it was going to be air hockey. We didn't know.
You wanted the frictionless surface.
We built a friction-free surface.
And how far were you shooting for above the surface at the time?
We didn't care.
You didn't care. You just wanted to float. And you didn't care about the moment of inertia, the puck. You didn't give it. You just, I want
We
to
had
float.
pucks that were flat.
Yeah.
Then we
Do you
then we
mean to
wound
tell
up.
me it makes a difference how far above the surface it floats?
See, that's what my PhD was at. No.
Well, you know,
No, this is
we just
fantastic.
wanted zero friction.
Yeah.
And we wanted to go, and we got it to go sufficiently high that, you know, you could play a while before you had to sand the birds off the edge of them. And then it became apparent that you couldn't sand the whole flat surface, so just a littlest warp would wreck it. So then we put them in the lathe and took the center out, which is similar to what you're playing with now, where you just have a seal around the edge. And so that evolved. But we made them out of lucite. They shattered. We made them out of
Lexan.
Lexan, which is
Bakelite.
Or Bakelite.
Bakelite.
Bakelite,
With
okay.
the fabric in it. They were old circuit electrical installation boards.
yeah. No, I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking
And
about.
of course, those got fuzzy.
Yeah.
Those would get furry.
Yeah.
A furry
Didn't
puck.
Lemieux eventually do a lot of those calculations of calculating the weight of the puck, the air pressure, all that stuff?
Never calculated a damn thing.
That's what we needed to know.
We found out that a puck about that big around covered enough holes to float reliably.
That's right.
And that we worked. I didn't.
But I thought Lemieux eventually got it.
Oh, he may have done that.
Yeah,
He-
yeah,
He was much more thorough than I was.
Yeah.
I got the damn thing working. I went on with the golf
Right.
club.
Because, like I said, when perfecting it, he actually got it to where there's a certain balance of the air and the heaviness of the puck and all that to where it will float, but it won't fly off.
Do you
that
remember
easily.
what I
kind of a
told you
range.
about never letting the truth stand in the way of a good story? Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about it.
I never, I don't know. I know that we did such things as put a little strip of masking tape and float over and say, okay, we're clearing, put scotch tape and
I
fly
built
over.
my table at home in 7. I drilled the holes with 40 thou drill. I hooked up a vacuum cleaner again, and the damn thing worked like a champ. No
There you go.
calculations, no.
His son Jimmy claims to be playing air hockey.
Yeah,
in
and he
his
threw
basement.
the table out about 3 years
Oh,
ago.
God. Oh,
Tired of moving it.
Wow.
So,
Do you know how much people in this room would have paid for that thing? That was like the eBay auction of whatever year they threw it away.
yeah.
I was wondering if anybody could speak to how like the dimensions of the table were decided. Like
I think I already
length,
addressed that.
it was all because it was standard equipment, or
4 foot by 8 foot sections of MDF.
MDF,
it
yeah.
just happened to be that?
I mean, they were the cheapest things that an industry could buy
Right.
Yeah.
to make something else out of it.
Right.
And they happened to be very close to pool table sizes,
Right.
which worked out really great. And then once we built the first table, we realized that happened to be about half of an average male's reach. Okay?
Got it.
So you could, if your legs were obstructed here, you could reach out to about
Halfway.
3.5 to 4 feet.
Right.
You know, and if you were taller, ta-da!
Right.
And I was a little taller than the average guy at the time, and I loved it because that gave me a little bit of advantage, I think, in you. Yeah, we both had a little advantage. We could do pretty damn good at getting right up to the line and not crossing it.
What,
That's,
what about
I think that's what.
what about the goals and the pucks and
the rails.
mallets?
What were some of the different things you evolved there? I mean, how'd you go from the steel to whatever?
I think that went pretty fast. I think we only messed around with it for a couple, 3 weeks before it came down to, that.
Well, we put the rubber on, and then we found out if you shot the puck at the rubber, it came back. It's some weird,
Right.
and then we found out that a plane
We needed rigid rails.
Yeah, you need the incident
And
exit
once we
angle,
got the
yeah.
rigid rails, we put them all the way around, and then there were no goals. And so we, because we were still thinking, pool, hey, let's cut the corners out. I think we tried that actually once.
Well, that's what was happening
Yeah.
when Brad threw the thing at me.
That's right.
It was
And that was the key, was that we had the ends wide open, and we said all we have to do is narrow the ends.
Yeah.
That would be like ice hockey, and that's kind of where the hockey idea came from. And, if you get this narrow little goal, you can shoot that.
How wide was the first one? He was asking about the goal. How,
Yeah, I was
how
just
big
wondering
was
how-
it? We saw your mallet.
44 inches.
No, okay. After that, when you had
We
the
got them
rail.
all the way down to maybe 8 inches.
8 inches. Okay. Okay.
They're a little bigger out here than
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
the ones. Ours was what, like 8 or 10 inches?
Yeah, 8 to 10 maybe was the narrowest we ever got. I think we started somewhere around about a foot.
Well, we started out just putting blocks of 2x4 down.
Oh yeah.
Very scientific.
Yes. Well, I just find it fascinating because when we're playing and we're trying to shoot specific shots, there's such a perfect distance. We've developed a game around the distances that exist that I'm not sure if you had that in mind when you were building it or if it just
I'll
happens to
tell
be.
you what, the first time I remember ever putting down a dimension for that was when I was writing in my logbook. That we had. That I was going to give to Lemieux. I had to clean up my logbooks to complete. I had to complete my logbooks at the last minute before I left. And that's the first time I actually made a ratio. Like if somebody wanted to build a different size table altogether. I wrote down what the ratio of the length to the width was, and what the ratio of the width to the goal width was. And I gave those to Lemieux. I have no idea what. I ended up somewhere around 12 inches, didn't it?
What's that?
The goal
The
width.
goal width.
What's the goal width? 13.
No, the goal width is, there's the goal hole itself, but then, and that's 13, but then the
Outer diameter. Yeah.
the actual,
Total width. With the
slant,
curve,
the slant
yeah.
in is about 14 7/8.
Just about 14 to 7.
Was it straight at first, or did it?
The diameters of the fronts are a little different.
Yeah.
I couldn't answer.
I can't recall.
See, that's what I was wondering, was it the early prototype, had you sort of narrowed the goal down that detailed, or was it more or less sort of?
It was still more or less sort of. I
It
think,
was something like 3 pucks or something like that.
The 3 pucks roll.
The original table had a smaller goal than this one.
Somebody having a hard time,
But you guys are so much darn better at grabbing, and the reaction times are phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'd love to get you on that old table with a little hole. But okay, put the thing in front and Brad say, now shoot. So you go around this way and try to go here, and back in that way, and try to get around him to get a free.
And doesn't it just kill you when you knock one into your own goal?
Yes, it does. I've done that to lose matches many times.
It's cost me lots of coffee.
That was one of my favorite things about the whole damn thing. Boom. What did I just do?
I don't know. It was a fun project when it finally became a project.
We think it's fun.
It was probably a bootleg project for a while.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Really?
it didn't
Skunk
get
Works?
much, management attention until the, guys showed up.
But,
So they just let you guys run off and build whatever.
Well, that's what I said. It was a very creative atmosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lot more latitude than we probably deserved or should have had.
they made a lot of money off of us, so I don't feel sorry for Brunswick. But the, Brunswick in '65, when I went there, corporate engineering was an entity into itself. And any division of Brunswick could petition to have the engineering experts
Jump on their thing.
jump on it.
Yeah.
And corporate Chicago paid for it. So all the divisions got free engineering. I did molded school desks for school equipment.
Oh, yeah,
Calhoun.
yeah.
Remember those with the
Easy,
polyester,
yeah.
polyester? Made a beautiful desk, but the damn screws would rust off overnight. Must have been a city or something. But anyway, the whole thing was projects. You get your project, it was kind of like going in, drawing your assignment out, and going down and see if you could solve the problem. We were basically problem solvers. Well, in about
And we had numerous, we had divisions that were into power boating, sailboating, bowling, all the table games. We had a division that made military vehicles. Brunswick used to make the back bars for all the saloons in America. And World War II, they made
Brunswick.
gliders. They made gliders. Troop gliders.
Waco G4 glider was built by Brunswick and Muskegon.
I remember you guys mentioned to me that you were working on these scoring things so did that have any impact in any of this when you were doing that?
They transferred some of that. Baldwin, one of the electronic projects that Brad was involved with was the automatic score for bowling.
Yeah.
And obviously some of the arcade
Technology.
games have automatic scoring devices built in for the air hockey. So there was some translation. But we just, we had the corporate, and then in about '69, Powers in Chicago said every division now, when they apply for a project from corporate, they have to fund it. And of course, the division manager said, "Bull, I'm not going to put my money out for those guys to spend. They did it in-house again." So our assignments just went to virtually nothing. And
How long overall did you guys spend on developing air hockey? Until you, like, from the time you started?
20 minutes. It was done
Most of
over
the
a period.
development was spent on our own time over lunch hour and after 5 o'clock.
Oh, it was done on time that just might have got mislogged.
It's really true. I mean, we started out big on it because we were all kind of hot about the idea.
yeah.
The minute we got that first table operating, we three were really hot about it.
Oh, yeah, and everybody that played it.
That's right.
Everybody in the engineering all over the company
Oh,
there,
God, they came
they
from
come
all
in to
over.
play air hockey. We had to chase them out.
So from the time you guys came up with it and were building it, when did you actually go after the patent and they thought they had something? Or did you get
Oh,
the
that
patent
was
right up
after
front?
I
Or
left.
I never
That
even
was
wanted
after
to go.
Okay, so you
I
guys.
never even wanted to go for a patent, like I never do, but I end up with hundreds of them. But anyway, that was never an issue for any of us. It's something that corporate made us do. And
I went after every damn burn patent I could get, because an engineer, that's like publishing in
Yeah.
academia.
Yeah,
well,
it
that's
is.
true.
See, at Bendix and General Motors and National Cash Register, you had a better chance, it went in your resume.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, I was probably more attuned to putting the patent in the logbook,
Yeah.
which is how
Well,
I got
I
my name on the
learned that
patent.
from him. Eventually, I became a little more attuned to
Patent was
that.
kind of like worth what, about 3 or 4 papers, or
I don't know. It was
a good thing.
When I worked at Bendix, you got $25 at the application and $100 when it issued, and your name in the company.
Yeah.
But in Brunswick owned all the benefits of the patent.
Oh yeah, Brunswick.
Yeah.
It was
Oh
a
my
corporate
God,
patent.
yeah, we had
We
to,
never got
Never
it.
had
we had to sign agreements. I never
Right.
even signed mine, but, you know, but I knew I didn't stand a chance of going up against Brunswick, so I was no way I was gonna try to make any money out of
I
that.
had I knowing what I know about business today, that would have been a different story.
Well, let me ask you guys, after the original prototype got warehoused, and then you guys left the company and whatever, were you thinking it'll never get done? Were you guys thinking, well, what the hell? Or you were thinking, hey, if they don't do something, I'm gonna, by golly, do something with air hockey? Or are you just thinking, well,
You go check the U.S. Patent Office and you'll find a patent for magnetic hockey.
Really?
And that was not shared with anyone. I have a few dollars invested in a patent on a magnetic air hockey table that use permanent magnets. Works.
I think you wrote a story about mag hockey.
Turning the magnets upside down.
Yeah.
Why would you pick permanent magnets over electromagnets or superconducting magnets? What was your thinking then?
I was, when I was with General Motors, one of my assignments was officially to find a way to solve a competitor's problem that would not interfere with their patents. So I had previous history in finding areas around patents, and I determined that I could make a permanent magnet puck using the what do you call it? You know, like the stuff on a refrigerator door, the flexible magnet.
Yeah.
And I put strips down on that, and it works, but it's coggy. And when the puck goes down to a certain speed, it goes, and it finds a home. So it's kind of a different thing. I never got it perfected. And I went to Bally and a couple of the other competitors, and they said, we'd rather infringe on Brunswick than settle in court.
They didn't want to do the development.
Well, I put a lot of work into it and time, but knowing the realities of the world now, I probably, after they let me go the way they did, I
You were done with it.
would have just gone down the street.
Well, did you, when you were developing this and coming up with the idea, did you ever build a prototype? Did you?
The
It was
magnet,
all.
yeah.
You did? Okay, so you actually built a permanent magnetic.
I have a fair assortment of magnetic materials.
Yeah.
But it's like computers, or like all of the stuff, which you are well acquainted with, and I'm not. If you'd had the computers today, then
yeah.
we have today, the golf game would have been in your hip pocket, you know?
Yeah.
And if I'd have had, Brad has some magnets they use on some of these missile control motors. My God, they pull the filling out of your teeth at 30 feet.
Yeah.
And if I'd had some of that material to work with, it might have been a different story.
Did you ever get into like building the homogeneous field and shimming and that kind of stuff? Or you just were interested in getting the floating again, the floating kind of thing?
I was interested mainly in trying to smooth out the floating.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it seems conceivable to me using, certain kinds of magnets that you could design something where the puck won't fly off the table. With field theory
There
and stuff.
always will be aerodynamic forces. I saw pucks fly today.
Oh, yeah.
It's far less prevalent than it used to be. But if you get a flat surface flying at a certain speed, it's going to fly.
We have some really powerful magnets today, superconducting magnets that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
750 megahertz fields with.
As a matter of fact, NASA had a device in Houston, I believe, where they had a steel ceiling, and the astronauts were suspended on permanent magnets, and the permanent magnets were forced away from the ceiling with an air cushion, so they were hanging on friction-free bearings and floating around the room. And that's both. I mean, that's magnet and air hockey upside down together. Of course, the technology, gentlemen, we're almost 40
I
years
know.
ahead of it.
Yeah.
And now if somebody wanted to float their hubcaps out in the parking lot, they'd go down to Toys R Us and buy one, for God's sake. They've got little electric motors.
But you know, nobody's improved on the original Brunswick air hockey technology in terms of how it plays. And of course, the electronics and all that is improved, but the actual mechanics of how it
Play
plays.
dynamics of the game.
Yeah.
It's,
See that?
the dynamics of the game, the overall design, we were very fortunate. I mean, I could build you one with holes on a hex pattern and probably get by with a slightly smaller fan.
Well, but I was telling Phil that all the other manufacturers build, they just slap a blower or they don't understand it, and their games don't play the same. That's why they're not sanctioned and why you can't play them as a sport, and why they don't sell as well. But they think, well, all you need is some holes. They don't know the size, they don't know the relation, they don't know the blower, the puck.
So
and
it
all
sounds like you need a variable speed blower.
Well, there's one out there that has pucks
Vary
that
the
look
pressure
very
to
similar
what
to
you
this,
want.
but they have very shallow bumps to get real low friction. And they rely on the aerodynamics to float the puck.
Yeah,
There's no
yes.
air in the
I've
table.
seen that, yeah.
And I played that one, and it's not that bad.
Do you know,
But there's no blow at all.
when you send a dynamo table to Japan, even though it's 110 volt there, it's slightly lower so that
Yeah, it is, 110 volt, 60 hertz.
Yeah.
Rather than 117.
Right, so the air there is a little bit less.
Yeah.
And it still works, but, you know, so there is variation.
You go to altitude in Colorado, we have totally different
So you need
play
a variable
dynamics
speed
with it.
blower.
I'll bet,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mark's banks are crisp in Colorado.
He knows
I-
from personal
So a
experience.
high-class
Yeah,
table, a
I've
high-class
done well.
table would be a
Yeah,
variable
yeah.
speed blower with a pressure transducer measuring the plenum temperature, pressure.
Well,
No matter
as,
where
so
you
as,
played it, it would be the same.
Yeah.
so as the puck gets worn down, you could vary the.
Actually, I have a kind of a question is, like, if you remember, like, the first time being out in public and seeing air hockey out in public after you left Brunswick, and like, hey, they finally did something with this, or
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Lemieux called me. Lemieux called me when he got home from the NSG show. He said, Bob, you're gonna like this. And he told me about putting it in the reception they got in Chicago. So I was sort of prepared for seeing them.
And I was totally unprepared. I went out, I went from Brunswick to a place called Krieger, which is an office furniture manufacturer, a contract furniture manufacturer in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I was totally unaware of anything that was happening, except that I think Bob and I got together for a little patent discussion with, what's his name?
Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein, yeah.
Who's
But,
Epstein?
other than
Sheldon
that,
Epstein.
I was totally unprepared, and then I just walked into a bowling alley in Green Bay, and there it was, and I said, "Whoa, this is cool." Yeah, it's a real
What
life
year
thing.
did that happen, Phil? When was that, and when did your phone call take
Oh,
place,
Lord,
Bob? When did you guys actually?
I don't think I went to that bowling alley until about 1970 is when I moved to Green Bay, I think.
Well, you couldn't have found it in the bowling.
No, it
alley
had to be
74, 5.
72 or later.
Really?
Yeah, it goes to 72 when Lemieux called me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
the first
when he got back from the NSGA show, they still didn't know
Well,
how to build.
no, you're right. That's
first commercial
that's
tables-
probably when it
So
was.
about
'cause I'd
They
been
did
there a
till the
couple
end of
years,
72.
Yeah, 72, 3, 4, along in there.
73 is when they all exploded everywhere.
And Lemieux came back from the NSGA show, and I said, Bob, you're gonna believe it. He said, you're probably one of the few. He said, I put that thing on display and they couldn't kick people off of it. So we had the same experience with the Brunswick board.
When's your recollection? When is your recollection that phone call would have taken place?
It would have been in like I say, 72, 73, long in there. It was, a long time ago.
Well, it had to be 72 because the next show was the MOA, which was the coin-op show, and that was in November 72, and that's when they introduced it with the coin-op.
Oh,
And that's
really?
when it,
I didn't know
that's
that.
when it really started selling. Yeah.
I ran into
That
it
was
at
in
the bowling
Chicago.
alley in Grand Haven, the first one I saw. I told the guys, yeah, I was one of the inventors. And the guy, yeah, bullshit. Yeah, right, you know, and you walk on water too. I mean, but we've,
Float on air.
yeah, but, you know, guy says, you done do that. I went down to my file drawer and I pulled out the patent, I put it on the table. And the guy says, but I have much more significant contributions than air hockey as far as my patent life, yes.
Well, not in our eyes.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Avi Arad, who's the head of Marvel Entertainment, and for some reason his name comes up. He says, "Oh, I was involved with air hockey in the invention." Do you guys know anything about this guy, Avi Arad?
That may be the wannabe that Brunswick was trying to defend against when they called us in, you suppose?
Well, I was.
Remember there was some dude that, you know, came out of the blue and said,
Yeah.
oh, I did this 5 years ago or something.
So that's why Sheldon called you in. Talk about the
They called us in, we did the depositions to the patent attorneys in front of a
And
witness,
that's when you
signed the
tried-
deposition, sent them a bill for the trip,
and
and
that's
never
when you
paid the
tried to
bill.
get Brad on the patent.
What?
They still owe me
stiffed you guys.
$68.
Plus interest.
But.
I mean, it was just, that was Epstein.
Are you saying?
You owed it
I
to
don't
him.
know. I have to look
Who
at
is
it.
Epstein?
He was the Brunswick patent
Did ya?
attorney.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you, dude. Oh, that's great, yeah.
Don't kiss him, he'll give you a bad taste. But,
Need some attorney
he
jokes.
was just a little banny rooster. Like Brand said, he comes in, I've graduated from MIT, I can do it.
What a pompous son.
So,
Oh,
I always said he had my sympathy, but,
Yeah.
you know, it was just, I mean, I've dealt with patent attorneys for the last 50 years, and 90% of them are pretty good, you know? But once in a while, you wind up with a guy that's trying to tell you how what you did works. And, excuse me? You know? Maybe you missed the whole, you know, it's that kind of thing.
No.
But I'm here to tell you, I am here to tell you, it's a gospel truth. The way it happened is, this yo-yo was trying to cheat me out of a cup of coffee.
So who actually got the coffee? I mean, who did you
I
do?
won.
Yeah, so you got the coffee.
He got the coffee. He got the first cup of coffee.
I see
You won the first game
air
of
hockey
air
champion.
hockey in history. This is it.
We should have a tournament. And the
After
first
an,
match
hour,
is coming
after an hour and a half, the truth comes out.
Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah, you would be the
First to win the
world
first game of
record.
air hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a world record holder.
World champion.
1970.
It was short-lived.
69.
Like everything else, it was short.
And,
But I'm just pleased that something we had a part of is still alive and kicking.
millions of people across this world play air hockey. It's translated through
Hundreds of millions.
language barriers and
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions
everywhere.
of play.
I ran into it at a resort recreation area on the Mediterranean Sea last year. In a, you know, like it wasn't a bowling alley, but it was a rec area. They had merry-go-rounds and all that stuff, and in the room was a couple of air hockey tables.
There's organized groups now in Spain and Russia, Czechoslovakia, I think,
New
Really?
Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
They're all,
That's
you know, they're using our rules and stuff like that and
Fantastic.
trying to catch up to us. But it's still spreading.
I'll be in Russia in St. Petersburg. when you
That's
guys
where they
have
are.
the Chicago tournament.
That's where they are.
Pardon?
You're going to St. Petersburg?
St. Petersburg and down to Moscow.
Okay, St. Petersburg is where they have weekly or monthly tournaments.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, you gotta show up now.
I get to St. Petersburg, I go, Santa, let's go to the air hockey tournament.
Yeah.
Who wants to see the Hermitage? We're going to an air hockey tournament. My wife will go.
That's amazing, they just discovered us, what, in the last year or two, and they didn't know there was organized air hockey, and they went to the European Championship, and now we don't know how good they are, but they're coming along. And there's like, what, 50, 60, 70 active players in Russia?
no kidding.
In St. Petersburg?
Um,
Great.
Actually, the one place I'm surprised doesn't play more is Japan. but they've got so many other
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
you,
things to keep there.
Do you remember the cannon I made?
Oh my God, yeah.
Do you remember you shot it with the shotgun?
Yeah. It's still
Oh,
living
Lord.
I made a
You
quarter
kept that?
scale naval cannon, 1812 with the oak mount, you know, step. And Phil, I was at work, and I'm turning out the wheels, and Phil says, well, that should look distressed, it's old. And we were stabbing it with a nice pick, and he says, just a minute. He set it up, and he got out the shotgun, and he,
We were a little.
this is at work.
Hey, look, you gotta earn a living somehow.
Hey,
See, in our circles here, when we, when we thank everybody for coming and everything, and then we always say, but we thank most of all air hockey.
Yeah, I thank you guys for keeping air hockey moving. And it does move.
Well, hey, whoever wants to take credit, whether you're on the patent or not on the patent, you and Lemieux and Phil, and I mean, when we contemplate a world without air hockey, believe me, it's worse than depressing.
We've told the truth about how it happened, and we all three were pieces of it. If someone wants to say, well, could it have happened without Brad? Who knows?
Yeah,
But
Well, I don't think it would have happened.
that's the eternal question.
It's a symbiotic relation.
it was just,
Was it inevitable? Would it inevitably happen from air tables, or in a parallel universe, would it have happened wrong? It could have happened wrong.
well, the
I'll
thing
tell
is
you
that
what.
it just happened.
Yeah.
That's why I said, when somebody said, well, how much research? Duh.
Where's all your equations?
How long does it take to grab a blackboard eraser? It went from a potential game, and we knew the potential was there. Phil knew it was there when he saw the thing in his previous life. And he talked to Anderson into building it. We'd never seen one, but I'd read about conveyors using air pressure. So I stuck my 2 cents worth in, and that's why they said, hey, Bob, you build it. He was going on vacation. So I helped build the table. Now, build is a strong word. I said, Jake, drill holes. We had technicians. And at that time, we were these high-paid engineers, and if you had a technician that you could direct to do a relatively menial job, I didn't build air hockey. I directed Jake to build holes. The only thing I contributed as far as engineering was determining the size of the holes. And I got very lucky. The second try worked.
Something came along, and air hockey was, you had a part, everybody had a little part, but somehow it happened.
The name came from self-defense. I had to come up with something to convince Anderson that I was going to get paid for that day, because he caught us goofing off. And anyway, I don't know, it just came out. It seemed like, hey, this is like hockey. We got a goal, we're beating it back and forth, and it's flying on air. And when Anderson said, what are you doing? I said, what's it look like? Air hockey. I mean, nobody came down, maybe the boss told me, I don't know. But it just, there was, wasn't it? It was just like that. And that was the total research in air hockey. It was,
So it sounds like there's a big chunk of time that took place from your idea when you guys were working on the NASA project, when you had the inverted fans to do grappling. Did they actually use some of that work for the grappling, or did that go away to the point where it transitioned?
That pretty much, yeah. In fact, it became this was a proposal that my company I was working for at the time, made to NASA, or to the predecessor to NASA, Wright Field, for a project that we wanted to participate in. And we never got the project.
University of Michigan put a puck, call it, a certain weight on the table, so it was floating, and had an electric motor on it. They put a smaller puck on there, the weight of an astronaut, and they connected it with a line, and they reeled in the astronaut under zero friction conditions.
Right.
and they found out that as the astronaut approaches the vehicle is a much larger mass, and if you're not perfectly in line, as he approaches, you go whoop and wrap around it.
Yeah, the angular momentum.
Angular momentum, and the G-forces will kill him.
Yep.
That's why the original astronauts had the little jets to propel themselves.
To counter it, yeah.
Yeah, but that air hockey table, in its scientific iteration, showed what would happen if you tried to reel in an astronaut on a rope. And that was in the report
Never
I
heard
read.
about this in Michigan where I was doing my PhD, ever. Was this in the engineering lab? Where was this in?
It was at the University of Michigan in
Yeah.
Ann Arbor in
Yeah.
mechanical
In mechanical engineering?
mechanical engineering.
Wow. Do you know who was doing that? We'd have
If
to-
you go back, if you can get into the archives
Yeah.
of Design News in 1968,
That would be interesting.
you may find it. And I know that you guys knows how to drive these funky little machines can probably find it. But the original Ann Arbor table was built with masonite. You've seen the decorative masonite with the cloverleaf holes? They overlapped them so the holes communicated. And that became their plenum.
So the holes, their design, they put the overlapping in order to get it
Well, that
even,
gave the inside,
homogeneous.
that was
Yeah.
like a honeycomb
Honeycomb.
inside, and then
Yeah.
they put formica on it, and they drilled holes.
God, we gotta find out who did that. That's great.
No, I just read them.
The plenum would have been a lot simpler.
Yeah,
Just a
yeah.
box with,
You're right.
flow restricted
I think
holes.
this
Yeah,
was the way.
exactly.
It's a bunch of parallel resistors to an electronics guy.
Well, this was
You ought
like,
to know that.
this is the way to keep the mica from blowing.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Here's the so I don't mean to stop you guys. The thing I find fascinating is that, so I work in games, and technology is like the base on which we build the games.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys sort of did a similar thing, except that you built a technology with no game in mind, and then created a game out of the technology. So I'm fascinated in how it all came together, and the fact that less equaled more. You got some basic parameters down. Like, again, in making games, it's like we have a great idea. We're like, okay, we're gonna make this game, and it's gonna be awesome. And then we build it, and we spend so much time hammering out issues. We sometimes end up with a different game than what we started with.
Right.
But
This thing here was,
you
geez,
didn't.
that looks like fun.
I mean, yeah, but you
It ought
didn't.
to be good for something.
Right, but you talked about, you had different pieces of, metal on the table, and then it all got stripped away, and all it is a flat surface with two holes at both ends,
Yeah.
and a game was born. And it's kind of like, it's fascinating how that process actually came around. And the other thing that fascinates me is that would never happen today. I don't think there's any company that would be willing to put money into developing anything with no sense of what it was that they were building when they started. They wouldn't say, let's just build something and we'll find an application for it. It doesn't
My
work that way.
master's, I took a master's course at Michigan State University, and I got a very decent grade in a paper called Managing Creative Personnel. And it was that same thing. You've got to let the leash loose.
They don't do it anymore.
It's difficult.
Very little of it done, if
No.
any.
Yeah.
But you can't leash a creative mind down. That's one, and I do a lot of work on AutoCAD. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But it's very easy for engineers to get into the idea, reach into the library, and get stuff. Where, we put men on the moon with slide rules. You don't have to have a computer. A computer is a tool. And in my opinion, being an old fart, and I got a license because of that, but I can say they cripple a lot of people too.
Yeah.
The creativity of doing it. Now, in my AutoCAD, and Phil, you probably do the same thing, I'll draw an iteration. Well, on the drawing board, you used to put a blank piece of paper over the top and trace the parts you like.
Right.
Well, AutoCAD, it's great. You just go copy, bing, over here, then you make changes. And it's
Save it under one name, make a new one.
it's a terrific tool.
That's right.
But the creative thing, you know, you go to my house, you go downstairs, there's a very cluttered drawing board. There is all the T-squares, angles, everything is there. A box of colored pencils, graph paper. I still, when I want to sketch something, I have a whole file of church bulletins. When the preacher's talking, I design things on the church bulletin. And my wife says, listen. But I've got a lot of stuff.
Right.
Parts of airplanes, boats, houses. I got all kinds of stuff. And I bet Phil, you still sketch.
Weird.
Well, no.
And you remember when you were
He is
painting?
weird now. He wouldn't have been 3 weeks ago before I moved into my new house. I had to consolidate 4 houses full of my stuff down to 1 house full.
Wow.
Hey, do you remember when you were painting a picture of your daughter?
Oh, yeah.
He had a photograph, and he's doing an oil painting of his daughter. And our favorite technician, Rigoni, walks by, and he said, "What you doing?" He said, "I'm painting a picture of my daughter." He said, "Can't you afford a camera?"
Oh, my Lord. I forgot that. This Rigoni, you would have had to know. Man, I'm telling you.
He'd slip an extra syllable. That's goody blank.
Wow. That's funny.
And, but he was an extremely capable hunter, fisherman.
Oh, yeah.
If you needed a part, you went to him and he says, I'll make a midnight requisition.
Yeah.
Next morning, he'd have it.
Oh, yeah.
He knew where everything in Brunswick was buried.
Yeah.
I still have some candlesticks and stuff I made out of
If
zebra
there was
wood.
something he couldn't do, he had a friend somewhere that could do it for him. Yeah.
I mean, with the company.
You know, John Dragone is still kicking,
No kidding.
and he's still playing an accordion. It is the god-awfulest thing you ever heard. A friend of mine hired him for music for a garden party. Oh my God. He's even weirder than he used to be.
Oh, really?
I find that hard. I walked into the bowling lane, there's 6 lanes that Brunswick had set up, and I happened to look down and there was an extension cord, the male end of an extension cord, plug stick, and I happened to look at it, and it's plugged into the wall. That idiot had put nails at both ends. So we plug it in and plug in the outlet on the ball return to power it. And it was just laying there hot.
Oh, my Lord.
The guy was a mental cripple.
He is not into it. He is hopeless. But he's still kicking.
Or cutting aluminum on the table saw. God, that was a record.
Or welding a U-joint. He borrowed a U-joint socket from Rigoni, and it wouldn't hold the angle he wanted, so he arc welded it at an angle, and when he returned it, Rigoni took him by the nose and led him to Sears and made him buy a new one.
We gotta get your picture.
Yeah.
So put your back against the wall. We're gonna photograph you, not you. No, actually, I want somebody to shoot our picture with me.
Yeah, I don't think so bad.
It's an old-fashioned.
Shoot up a storm. It's got lots of them.
So, that's fine. Let's see who you are. And then we'll that has to be in there.
So, Phil,
You know, we ought to get a big mirror and shoot everybody.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about that. I don't
That's
know
what
if we ever have
all
a
these
full
guys for all the
tournament picture
promotion
of.
they've been doing.
Is it on even up there?
James.
no, it'll only see it there.
Oh, okay.
The picture will show on the screen, but
He's got a fancy one.
Scoot in just a little bit. I want to see the air hockey now on the wall.
that was pretty good.
Air hockey reflex. You saw that spin 3 times.
Does that take you? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know because I haven't opened the flash. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, get her in.
Keep Brandon here. The unknown hero.
There's a bad guy in that.
Huh. Old meets new. Really cool. The thing I want people to see is that it's thicker, it's taller.
That's what I said.
It's not quite double.
Yeah. That's good.
Get this. Get this.
They asked me about it. Where did they come from? Tell them.
Oh man, where's Eric Anderson?
Seriously.
Hey, come on. Signature's on it now.
That's why I'm being so careful.
Oh, come on.
I'm playing with the original. That's what I'm doing. Just letting it roll on by.
It's really cool.